And all those cases, he's going to list maybe hundreds more, they involve guns that are not banned by this.
Enforcement officer or licensed security officer shall possess a firearm.
Today we take another step to advance historic gun violence prevention legislation.
There is no constitutional right to carry an assault weapon. It just doesn't exist. The Supreme Court has acknowledged.
Democrats to restrict Second Amendment rights, like requiring background checks for transfers of firearms.
An unconstitutional ban. In the heart of the American Southwest, where the desert stretches as far as the eye can see, a contentious issue has ignited a fiery debate in New Mexico. At the center of this maelstrom stands Governor Michelle Grisham, who in a bold move has suspended the Second Amendment, the very bedrock of American gun rights. But why, you may ask? The answer lies in the intersection of public health emergencies and surging violent crime rates. Picture this: a state grappling with rising violence, where the echoes of gunshots pierce the once peaceful desert air. Faced with this growing crisis, Governor Grisham declared a state of emergency. Her reasoning? But the path she chose to tread, invoking public health concerns as the basis for imposing temporary firearm restrictions, has sparked a constitutional wildfire. The heart of the matter lies in the Second Amendment, enshrined in the very foundation of the U.S. It's the right to bear arms, the very essence of American liberty. The move to suspend it, even temporarily, has raised red flags for many who staunchly believe in their right to protect themselves and their loved ones. Constitutional scholars and gun rights advocates have rallied in opposition. They argue that the suspension of the Second Amendment, even in the face of a perceived public health emergency, infringes upon the fundamental rights of New Mexico's citizens.
By comparison, in Florida, there are significantly less restrictions and no limits on magazine size.
Enforcement officer or licensed security officer shall possess a firearm.
It's a debate that has ignited passions on both sides of the aisle, as the delicate balance between public safety and individual liberties is called into question. The clash between the government's duty to protect its citizens and the people's right to keep and bear arms has ignited a constitutional powder keg. As legal battles loom on the horizon, the fate of the Second Amendment in New Mexico hangs in the balance. In the land of enchantment, where the desert winds whisper ancient secrets, the future of the Second Amendment remains uncertain. Governor Grisham's decision to suspend this hallowed right has ignited a constitutional firestorm, leaving citizens and legal scholars alike wondering, when does public safety trump individual liberty, and how will the courts ultimately weigh in on this contentious issue? Only time will tell, as the battle for the Second Amendment rages on in the heart of the American Southwest. Multiple lawsuits. This situation has reached a critical juncture with the initiation of multiple lawsuits against Governor Grisham and the state itself. It's a development that has captured the attention of various organizations, each with a vested interest in protecting what they perceive as citizens' fundamental constitutional rights to bear arms. One of the key players in this legal drama is the Firearms Policy Coalition, a staunch advocate for the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment Foundation has also entered the fray, further highlighting the intensity of the debate. The New Mexico Shooting Sports Association, representing the interests of sports shooters and enthusiasts in the state, has joined the legal proceedings as well. These organizations have all taken a stand against the ban, and their efforts are centered around preserving what they see as an inherent right of citizens.
From 2017 to 2021, 143 children were killed by guns.
Today we take another step to advance historic gun violence prevention legislation.
At the heart of these legal challenges is a Second Amendment to the United States Constitution, which reads, "A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed." This amendment has been a source of ongoing debate and interpretation throughout American history. Those in favor of gun rights argue that it unequivocally guarantees the individual's right to possess firearms for self-defense and other lawful purposes. On the other side, proponents of stricter gun control measures argue that the Second Amendment does not preclude reasonable regulations aimed at enhancing public safety. The lawsuits filed against Governor Grisham and the state of New Mexico are in essence a reflection of this broader national debate. They seek to address whether the ban on firearms, as imposed by the state, is consistent with the Second Amendment and other relevant legal precedents. Those challenging the ban contend that it infringes upon citizens' constitutional rights, and unfairly restricts their ability to protect themselves and their property. Furthermore, these legal actions raise questions about the balance between individual rights and public safety. While the right to bear arms is a cherished aspect of American culture and history, it is not absolute. Courts have consistently held that reasonable restrictions on firearms ownership and usage can be implemented to protect the welfare of society. The outcome of these lawsuits will likely hinge on whether the ban is deemed a justifiable measure in the interest of public safety or an unconstitutional overreach. As these lawsuits progress, they will undoubtedly be closely watched not only by those directly involved, but also by citizens across the nation who have a stake in the ongoing debate surrounding gun rights and gun control. It remains to be seen how the courts will ultimately weigh the competing interests at play and render a verdict that could set precedent for similar cases in the future. Delay in court hearings. The delay in the first court hearing for the complaints in this legal battle is indeed a significant development. It appears to stem from the appointment of a new federal judge, which has raised questions and concerns regarding the timeline and the potential consolidation of these cases. For the proponents of the ban, the delay could be viewed as an opportunity to further solidify their arguments and gather additional evidence in support of their case. It allows them more time to prepare a robust defense strategy, potentially increasing their chances of a favorable outcome in court.
They want to take away law-abiding citizens' ability to purchase the firearm of their choice, and don't let them fool you.
Compare with the decade before its adoption, the federal assault ban was associated with a 25% drop in gun massacres.
Additionally, it could give them room to explore potential settlements or compromises. On the other hand, the opponents of the ban may see this delay as a mixed bag. While it offers them extra time to refine their own legal strategies and strengthen their case against the ban, it can also be frustrating, as it prolongs the uncertainty surrounding the legal battle. The longer the delay, the more resources and time they may have to allocate to the case, potentially straining their resources. The delay may also lead to questions about the judge's stance on the matter. Is the new federal judge more inclined to rule in favor of the ban, or is their position less clear-cut? This uncertainty can affect how both sides approach the case and whether they seek to sway the judge's opinion through legal arguments or public opinion. The delay in court hearings introduces a layer of complexity to an already intricate legal battle. It underscores the importance of strategy and adaptability in the legal arena. Local law enforcement. Picture the bustling streets of Albuquerque, a city where modernity collides with the rich tapestry of Native American culture. Amidst this backdrop, the chief of police, a stern yet principled figure, stands firm in defiance of the controversial ban. With unwavering conviction, he refuses to enforce the order, boldly asserting its unconstitutionality. But the chief of police is not alone in his stand. On the outskirts of town, where the rugged terrain of New Mexico stretches as far as the eye can see, the county sheriff, a no-nonsense lawman, echoes a similar sentiment. He too has chosen the path of opposition, arguing vehemently that the ban treads on the hallowed grounds of the Constitution. This division within the ranks of law enforcement adds a layer of complexity to an already tumultuous situation. It's a clash of values and interpretations, a showdown between those who uphold the law and those who believe they are upholding justice. As the legal battle unfolds, the spotlight shines ever brighter on these two figures, their actions carrying weight not just in New Mexico.
It's a 20-round magazine. Here's a 12-round magazine that would be banned. It doesn't fit.
I can invoke additional powers. No constitutional right, in my view,
but resonating across the nation. For the ban's proponents, this internal resistance presents a challenge they never anticipated. It's a thorn in their side, a source of frustration as they seek to implement their controversial order. They must now grapple with the fact that not all those sworn to uphold the law are in lockstep with their agenda. Conversely, for the ban's opponents, the stance of these law enforcement officials is a glimmer of hope in a tumultuous time. It's a symbol of resistance, a testament to the enduring strength of constitutional principles. It fuels their fight, reaffirming their belief that justice will ultimately prevail. As the legal battle rages on, the divisions within law enforcement in New Mexico serve as a stark reminder that the pursuit of justice is far from straightforward. It's a winding road with unexpected twists and turns, where even those entrusted with upholding the law can find themselves on opposing sides of a contentious issue. And as the sun continues to set over the desert landscapes of New Mexico, the question remains, where will the scales of justice ultimately tip in this gripping saga? Citizen response. New Mexico has witnessed a significant surge in open carry protests as a direct response to the suspension of Second Amendment rights within the state. This form of civil disobedience has highlighted the depth of public sentiment on the issue of gun control and constitutional rights. The Second Amendment of the U.S. Constitution has long been a subject of debate and contention. It grants citizens the right to bear arms, and this right has been a cornerstone of American culture and identity for centuries. However, as concerns over gun violence have escalated, many states, including New Mexico, have implemented stricter gun control measures. Citizens, many of them armed, have gathered in public spaces to voice their concerns and grievances. These protests are characterized by individuals openly carrying firearms, typically rifles or handguns, as a symbol of their right to bear arms. The participants argue that their actions are a form of civil disobedience
and said he supports a ban on the sale of assault weapons, which there's no such thing, and high-capacity magazines.
There is no constitutional right to carry an assault weapon. It just doesn't exist. The Supreme Court has acknowledged.
aimed at challenging what they perceive as unconstitutional restrictions on their rights. One of the key elements of these protests is the exercise of First Amendment rights, which protect freedom of speech and assembly. Participants in these demonstrations not only carry firearms, but also engage in peaceful protest, often carrying signs and delivering speeches to articulate their position. This intersection of the First and Second Amendments underscores the complex nature of this issue. Critics argue that these open carry protests can be polarizing and may inadvertently create tension, as they can be perceived as intimidating by some members of the community. On the other hand, supporters argue that such demonstrations are a vital way to draw attention to their cause and to engage in a public dialogue about the balance between individual rights and public safety. The open carry protests in New Mexico are a direct response to the suspension of Second Amendment rights within the state. Democratic lawmakers. 6 Democratic lawmakers have stepped forward to voice their concerns regarding Governor Grisham's recent order. At the core of this controversy lies the sensitive matter of gun violence, and these lawmakers have publicly opposed the governor's actions. The central point of contention raised by these Democratic lawmakers is the perceived violation of both federal and state constitutions by the governor's order. This legal and constitutional challenge raises questions about the balance of power between state and federal authorities, highlighting a fundamental aspect of governance. Furthermore, the lawmakers are advocating for a more measured and deliberative legislative approach to address the issue of gun violence. Their stance emphasizes the importance of the democratic process, suggesting that such significant decisions should be thoroughly examined and debated within the legislative framework. This controversy within the state's legislative chambers serves as a reminder of the complexities of governance and the critical role that elected officials play in making decisions that impact the lives of their constituents. It underscores the importance of democratic processes in addressing complex societal challenges, such as gun violence. The public critique of Governor Grisham's order by 6 Democratic lawmakers revolves around the alleged constitutional violations and the call for a more deliberate legislative approach to tackle the issue of gun violence. Attorney General stance. The Attorney General's stance in New Mexico regarding the defense of the emergency order is indeed noteworthy. In most cases, the Attorney General has a statutory obligation to defend the state's officials and their actions. However, in this particular situation, the Attorney General has taken an unusual stance by refusing to defend the emergency order. This decision is based on a fundamental principle, prioritizing citizens' constitutional rights over the perceived impact of the emergency order on public safety. It reflects a belief that the measures imposed by the order may infringe upon individual liberties protected by the constituents. By choosing not to defend the order, the Attorney General is essentially aligning with those who argue that the government should not overstep its bounds, even in the name of public safety. This stance has sparked a significant legal and political debate, with proponents of the emergency order emphasizing the need for public safety and critics highlighting concerns about potential constitutional violations. It raises questions about the role of the Attorney General in upholding the law while also safeguarding citizens' rights. Definition of public health emergency. A central point of contention in this debate revolves around how the situation in New Mexico is classified. specifically whether it should be categorized as a public health emergency. This classification has significant implications for the legal and policy framework surrounding the emergency order. Critics of the emergency order argue that reclassifying gun violence as a public health crisis with the aim of imposing restrictions is a problematic approach. They contend that such a reclassification may not withstand judicial scrutiny and could set a precedent that allows the government to use public health as a basis for imposing restrictions on constitutional rights. The debate over the definition of a public health emergency highlights the intersection of legal, public health, and constitutional issues. It underscores the importance of clearly defining the criteria and standards for classifying a situation as a public health emergency, and the potential consequences of doing so in the context of gun violence and other public safety concerns. In summary, the Attorney General's refusal to defend the emergency order in New Mexico and the debate over the definition of a public health emergency are key aspects of a complex and contentious legal and policy issue. They touch upon fundamental principles of governance, constitutional rights, and the balance between public safety and individual liberties. Calls for legislative solutions. Gun violence remains a persistent and deeply concerning issue in the U.S. In the face of this ongoing crisis, there is a growing chorus of voices, including the Attorney General and some Democratic lawmakers, advocating for a legislative approach as the most effective means of addressing this problem. They underscore the importance of comprehensive solutions and urge Governor Grisham to collaborate with the state legislature to develop lasting changes. The call for legislative solutions stems from the recognition that gun violence is a multifaceted problem that demands a multifaceted response. While there is no one-size-fits-all solution, the legislative route offers a structured and organized means to enact changes that can help mitigate the crisis. One key aspect of legislative solutions is the potential for stricter gun control measures. These measures could include enhanced background checks, waiting periods, and limitations on the sale of certain types of firearms. By implementing such measures, lawmakers aim to prevent firearms from falling into the wrong hands, thereby reducing the likelihood of mass shootings and other forms of gun violence. Legislative solutions can address the issue of firearm trafficking, which often crosses state lines. By enacting laws that make it harder for individuals to buy firearms in one state and transport them to another with lax regulations, lawmakers can disrupt the flow of illegal firearms and reduce gun violence nationwide. Another vital component of legislative solutions is the allocation of resources towards mental health services. Addressing the mental health aspect of gun violence is crucial, as many perpetrators of mass shootings
Democrats to restrict Second Amendment rights, like requiring background checks for transfers of firearms.
The assault weapon ban does not ban handguns. I'm sad to say people are having to use guns to defend themselves.
have exhibited signs of mental distress. By legislating increased funding and improved access to mental health services, lawmakers can offer support to individuals in crisis, potentially preventing acts of violence. Comprehensive legislative efforts can address the underlying factors that contribute to gun violence, such as poverty, inequality, and social instability. By crafting policies that tackle these root causes, lawmakers can create a safer environment where individuals are less likely to resort to violence as a means of addressing their grievances. The call for Governor Grisham to collaborate with the state legislature is indicative of the need for a united front in tackling gun violence. Bipartisan efforts and cooperation between branches of government are essential for the successful implementation of effective policies. By working together, lawmakers can ensure that the resulting legislation is well considered, balanced, and capable of withstanding legal challenges. The calls for legislative solutions to address gun violence reflect a recognition of the complexity of the issue and the need for a multifaceted response. Stricter gun control measures, the prevention of firearm trafficking, improved mental health services, and addressing root causes are all elements of comprehensive legislative approaches. By working together, Governor Grisham and the state legislature have the opportunity to make meaningful and lasting changes to combat gun violence, making their state safer for all residents. Broader implications. The ban on firearms in New Mexico indeed carries broader implications that transcend its immediate legal and political consequences. It serves as a focal point for discussions about the delicate balance between government authority, individual rights, and the role of law enforcement. echoing a larger national conversation on gun control and the Second Amendment, with implications that ripple far beyond the state's borders. Second Amendment interpretation. At the heart of the debate is the interpretation of the Second Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which guarantees the right to bear arms. The New Mexico ban sparks discussions on whether such restrictions infringe upon this constitutional right and to what extent states can regulate firearms while respecting individual freedoms. Federal versus state authority. The ban highlights the tension between federal and state governments when it comes to gun control. While some states, like New Mexico, may take more aggressive measures to address gun violence, others may opt for more permissive regulations. This leads to questions about how much authority states should have to enact their own gun laws, creating a patchwork of regulations across the country. Public safety versus individual liberties. The broader implications of this ban delve into the age-old debate of balancing public safety against individual liberties. Advocates argue that such measures are necessary to protect communities from gun violence, while opponents contend that they infringe upon personal freedoms. Finding the right equilibrium is a constant challenge for policymakers. National policy dialogue. New Mexico's ban becomes part of a nationwide dialogue on gun control, prompting other states and the federal government to reevaluate their own policies. It could potentially catalyze further discussions on implementing similar measures in other states, or even inspire national legislation. Legal precedent. The ban may set a legal precedent, influencing future court decisions on the constitutionality of firearm regulations. Cases related to this ban could make their way through the judicial system and ultimately reach the Supreme Court, shaping the legal landscape for years to come. Political ramifications. The issue of gun control is inherently political, and the New Mexico ban will have political ramifications. It may galvanize voters, affect elections, and shape the priorities of politicians at the state and national levels. Cultural and social impact. The ban also touches upon the cultural and social aspects of gun ownership in the United States. It underscores the divergent viewpoints held by different segments of society, and it may contribute to shifts in public opinion regarding firearms. In summary, the ban on firearms in New Mexico serves as a microcosm of the broader national debate on gun control, highlighting the complexities surrounding constitutional rights, government authority, public safety, and individual freedoms. The implications of this ban extend far beyond state borders, shaping discussions, policies, and legal interpretations at both the state and federal levels. Sheriff's response. The ban went into effect immediately, but local law enforcement has pushed back, leaving enforcement up to state police. The order directs state police to add officers in Albuquerque with funding allotted for overtime. Albuquerque Police Chief Harold Medina and Lujan Grisham made it clear that state police will handle civil violations of the order, which could result in fines of up to $5,000 for violators. Sheriff John Allen stated on Monday that Bernalillo County Police would not enforce the order, expressing his belief that it is unconstitutional. He voiced concerns about potential liability issues for officers in the future, stating, "They won't enforce it, it's unconstitutional." In response to Sheriff Allen's refusal to enforce the order, Governor Grisham pushed back, asserting, "It's not for police to tell me what's constitutional or not." She emphasized her commitment to community safety, stating, "If you want the community to be safer..."
And all those cases, he's going to list maybe hundreds more, they involve guns that are not banned by this.
The right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
Show me that you can do that. She added, "If you're not going to stand up for these kids and really test as hard as you can, getting fewer guns and dealing with gun violence in a meaningful way, then you're basically saying that you won't be responsible to protect the citizens of the state. Well, I will." The order is set to remain in effect for 30 days, pending any legal challenges in the coming months. While a number of states have seen restrictions on places where guns can be carried in public, there hasn't been a total carry ban like this. And while other officials have tried to pass gun restrictions through legislation, with ensuing legal challenges in many instances, experts say Grisham's order is bolder and broader than many of those efforts. New York City managed to designate Times Square a gun-free zone last year. It remains to be seen what kind of precedent Grisham's order will set for future gun control efforts, but some fear there is an inherent risk in a bold move. It's a sacrifice that allows everyone else to get their arms around a growing, significant problem, she said. Republican state representatives John Block and Stephanie Lord have even called for the governor to be impeached. And some groups and advocates that have historically supported restrictions on guns have expressed concern over how the ban was implemented. That's all for this video, folks. See you next time.